Hi. Sonic Promos is a promotional marketing agency. So everything that we deal with generally has to do with tangible interactions with people. We use logoed items, branded goods to help people build relationships, whether it's with a brand, whether it's with their employer, whether it's with their prospects. That is what we do. So with the pandemic hitting, everything that was tangible needed to be sort of moved. We've kind of very quickly gone from being able to, hand out 500 things to talking with our clients about how they're going to create an engagement somehow online that would maybe eventually end up with some sort of tangible thing in their hands. But really it's taking that physical engagement and turning it into part of the virtual world.
Great, thank you. So, question for Anna. You ended up having to change the way you deliver workshops and also develop new courses for your clients. How is the demand for business now?
Yeah, so absolutely, just like I'm pretty sure every other organization during this time, the pandemic has really changed not just what our clients are looking for and interested in, but how we offer our services to our clients in terms of our own internal systems. So I'll start with demand. In terms of demand, kind of two things are happening at the same time right now or have happened simultaneously. So first off, like I mentioned for our company, but for all of our clients as well, nearly every organization's operational systems have been disrupted by the pandemic in some sort of way and need to be redefined. They need to be adapted, whether that's a short-term change or a lot of companies are looking at longer-term changes. And at the same time that all of these organizational systems are being kind of totally disrupted, well-being is absolutely at the forefront of the conversation in terms of what business leaders are talking about, how we can support teams. And so this simultaneous shift in both of these areas has created an environment that's really unlike any environment we've seen in the past in the world of corporate well-being and culture, which is this opportunity for organizations to rebuild their systems with well-being in mind, which is so crucial since this really does need to be discussed at the systemic level to be really impactful. So we're seeing just a huge spike in demand, not just from the leadership and policy consulting side, but also from, like you said, our courses. Most of the areas that are the most popular right now are emotional well-being, remote team building, and like you said, we have a whole new group of classes that's really specifically focused on remote work boundaries and well-being, since those are so different. And from the delivery side, we've been very fortunate as an organization that we have been in this space. So it's not really the what that's changed besides these, small kind of shifts in our programming here and there, but it's really the how. So everything we do is remote now. All of our workshops are remote. We've developed an entire online library of new content that people can access anytime, because as we're all learning together, it's hard to be on Zoom meetings all day. But yeah, I mean, that's actually been a positive in some way for us, which again, we're really fortunate. We were just talking a little bit before this started. It's not uncommon now for us to have employees tuning in from LA to Barcelona to Ukraine, all in the same place. So basically seeing a huge spike in demand. The flip to virtual, we're seeing it is actually in some ways more effective to offer this right now virtually. And our attention has been able to be focused on how do we create the most relevant new programming.
And you find that some of that programming is more analog as well? I mean, to your point, we're all on Zoom calls and team calls 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And then I think about team building in a digital way when you're exhausted after a day. Get invited to happy hours and other things on Zoom calls, and sometimes it's the last thing I want to do.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And it's actually, I find it wonderful that Julianne's talking about these tangible materials. So we see this happening in a lot of different ways. One of our clients, we just did a multi-day virtual retreat with them and actually sent tangibly to each of their individual employees a gift basket. And so I think there is this huge opportunity to blend virtual and tangible when it comes to building culture and well-being. So that's great that this just happened to be such a great fit there, but absolutely. And I think that's also where we start to see static content. So recordings of content, only audio. Sometimes you just need something to listen to, whether it's a meditation or a podcast. So we're seeing a blend of all those different things.
Huh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's a great segue back to Julianne. So, Julianne, your work involved a lot of in-person events, a lot of, we'll use the word again, tangible things. Yeah. How have you adapted to in that transition?
Well, the events all for, in the very beginning, everything just kind of stopped. And then it took a little while for everybody to get their legs under them again. And as people were reimagining what events were going to look like, we started putting together ways to support the pieces of the event that our agency normally supports. So working with sponsors to help engage prospects, and working with the event coordinators really to get people there and keep them engaged and keep them interested. So we set up for a lot of our clients things like redemption portals. So when you talk about drawing boundaries between work and home, when you're working from home all of the time, one of the things that our sponsors, not our sponsors, but event sponsors deal with is they don't have access to the people that they normally would. Not only at the event itself, but generally, you get somebody's business card, you have their mailing address, you can send them follow-up, you can continue the conversation after the event is over. We've been trying to engage people in a way that makes it worthwhile to them to share their personal information, kind of breaking down that boundary a little bit, but make it so that the things that they're really interested in, they want to give their access to those sponsors, and very, permission based, so that they're able to follow up post-event with something meaningful, either the collateral material that they would normally get, but also the thing that the person wanted, the, decorated mug, or, work from home desk set, whatever it might be. So that's sort of where we've been helping folks sort of bridge that gap. We did do and have done things like, there was a summer camp for kids that suffer from a particular physical challenge that normally meets for 1 week every year. And the summer camp brings together kids from all over the world that have this unique disability, and it got canceled. And so we worked with the camp directors to put together what would be a 1 week camp that they could do online, and we took care of putting together all the materials that they needed, and then shipped those out to each of the kids. And they sent us videos of opening the boxes, and that stuff is just so heartwarming, because it really is the one time of year that these people all have the ability to connect together, and we didn't want to see them lose that opportunity. So those are some of the ways that we've sort of transitioned.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So Ryan, among your small business customers, what is the biggest challenge to working remotely, and what are some of the solutions they can employ to help?
I would say probably one of the bigger challenges is now all of a sudden we go from a fair amount of folks working in the office and your network and everything contained within that building being sized to handle people working within that building. And now we have to, post-COVID and all of this craziness, we have to rely on the internet service provider network, your connection outside of your own building, and everybody being out of the office. There essentially is no more centralized office. So it went from everything being perfectly fine and running acceptably to now everything having to go through multiple steps of a network and causing a lot of congestion, a lot of slowdown in productivity, people being upset because their applications aren't running as fast as they used to, and then trying to attack it in a step process with everybody getting new laptops and hoping that a new laptop performance would be able to, kickstart some of the productivity again. And then realizing, okay, that's not quite enough. Now we have more activity from the same amount of people because they have more powerful devices. And, eliminating step by step through the entire network, through all of your hardware, to find a root cause and understanding that network traffic is spiked through the roof, and being able to afford bigger bandwidth for your company, or being able to afford bigger bandwidth in your own internal network, and making the changes necessary to really be able to enhance the application performance. And also at the same time, trying to implement some way, a very, very popular thing right now is what we call virtual desktops. Being able to have your laptop really be nearly a dummy device, and everything being served from your data center, and the challenges that are really required in something like that as well. So the probably the biggest thing and hurdle that a lot of folks have had to overcome is understanding, going from point A, prior to COVID, everybody working in the office, through this whole pandemic process, and understanding the changes that are required in order to do just the same business that you were doing prior, has surprised a lot of folks who unfortunately weren't quite ready. Nobody can ever really be ready for something like this, but weren't quite ready to make that leap. And now, in order to stay fluid and adapt to the situation and get back, hopefully at some point in the future, to business as normal, but also give people that same flexibility and freedom that they're currently experiencing with this whole work from home, has been a tremendous input of questions and projects and things that myself and my team are currently working on.
And you mentioned the use of virtual desktops. So are you seeing a lot of transformation to cloud technologies from some of the small companies that were maybe perhaps doing more on-prem?
Absolutely. But that's always a trend. I think the uptick in cloud usage has been much more marked because of the fact that most folks weren't really prepared prior. That it's just been one of those, cloud isn't really a destination, it's another way of doing business. And the way of doing business in the cloud is agility and being able to change very quickly, because frankly, all you have to do is click a couple of buttons and hit go, and anything that you need is done within seconds. Whereas doing that in your own private infrastructure requires planning, requires purchasing, requires implementation, and all these fun, wonderful things that unfortunately a lot of folks have to go through, that sometimes is a headache. But the end destination takes a lot longer in private and very, very quick in the cloud. So yeah, we have seen quite a bit of it, quite a lot of conversation from customers who want to find a way to have both, the best of both worlds in one, and 100% in a doable project. But again, you got to have the right setup going into it. And once you do, it changes the way you do business forever.
And Julianne, what was it like shifting your team to remote work? What types of technologies did you find helpful with your team?
We've always had, or at least for the last 10 years or so, we've had a few people being remote. And so we use Slack and we use Zoom forever. I think we were beta testers of Zoom when it first launched. And so everybody just kind of moved over to using that full time. And then in terms of really like making use of it, we did a lot, especially in the beginning, we did a lot of group gatherings. We did the office happy hours, and then we eventually moved it to an office coffee because things were getting a little messy, Friday at 4:30. And then, even that kind of petered off as things got busier. But I think we actually maybe took it down a notch. I mean, in our business, it's rare to talk on the phone a lot. Almost everything we do is by email at this point. And we put everybody back on the phones, and everybody was connecting with their clients and really making it stopped being about business for 10 minutes and was really very personal for a little while. You know, are you okay? Am I okay? Is everything okay? A lot of the folks we work with, especially in the events industry, lost their jobs. And so, you know, kind of talking them through things they could do. I mean, it was just way more personal than business normally is. And we work in a business that's pretty personal anyway.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a big change. And now I think things it does feel a little bit more normal. Everybody's sort of, you know, stepped up their game a little bit in terms of the change in people. Like a lot of the event people that lost their jobs are going out and doing entrepreneurial things and looking for their own opportunities. And that's really kind of neat to watch. And that's helped us, you know, get our feet back on the ground too.
Oh, great. Thank you. Then Anna, I'd love to get your thoughts on this as well. You mentioned some of the workshops earlier that you've been producing for the newly remote clients. What do your clients tend to request the most, and how does the feedback from them sort of influence the programming that you continue to do?
Yeah, well, I want to take a second just to acknowledge both what Ryan and Julianne were saying. Ryan specifically mentioned that, you know, the changes that are happening right now are going to change the way that we do business forever. And I just think that really can't be understated. Like we've experienced magnifies trends. It expedites trends. It pushes us forward in progress and speeds up things that maybe were going to happen in 5 years and now they're happening in 6 months. And so I think as, you know, small businesses, it's important to remember that these changes are not loops. We're not going to loop back around to where we were. They are progressive and they're going to change the way that we do business forever, whether it's the technology we use or how we engage our teams. And I think that it's really, you know, a forced opportunity for small businesses, especially to refocus, prioritize agility, prioritize innovation, be the ones to, you know, make those smart investments. Like Ryan was saying, figure out from the technology side, what is the one investment you can make now that is going to, you know, make the biggest impact. And I think that's the same from the cultural and team building a healthy remote culture perspective. To your question about our programming, yeah, every year we always use client feedback to build a new set of programming, new workshops, new policy recommendations. And this process typically happens around this time during the year, but, you know, the pandemic expedited that process for us. So we were doing that as early as March this year. And what we're seeing, like I mentioned, is kind of this 3 different types of new focuses that people are really interested in the workplace in developing a remote culture. So the first is just straight up emotional well-being. So that has to do with stress management. We have a workshop called Fear of the Future, which is all about managing uncertainty and fear. We have, you know, grief workshops. The next bucket of 3 is community building. So, right, this looks like your classic, you know, team happy hours, but like we said, that gets a little old after a while. So we've really been doing things that combine skill building or business strategy and team building. So we've been doing a lot of, you know, multi-day retreats, not where you're on Zoom all day, but kind of these coordinated retreats where we're talking about the future of business. We're talking about new policy training, new systems training, and we're doing team building. And then the last bucket, which is really a core focus for a lot of people, is this idea of work from home boundaries and support. So this includes everything from the psychology of work from home boundaries, like what does it really mean to have a boundary when you like work for 8 hours, you turn around, you eat some cereal, then you work for 8 hours again. And I think that Julianne actually spoke a little bit about this idea of redefining boundaries, redefining, again, how we do things. And she spoke about it in terms of how they interact with their clients to get consent, like explicitly say, hey, are you interested in this? Let's do it. And I think from a cultural perspective, team building, when it comes to work from home, this is the most important thing business leaders can do right now, is all the things we didn't think we had to ask about our own culture, about our employees' needs. We just have to ask them, and then we have to put clear policies in place that help organizations, that help people know how they can operate when there are no physical boundaries. So that has to do with things like, paid time off, remote meeting policies, and even benefits consulting. So that's a little bit about, how the focus has changed. And I think that just from a technology perspective, if there are business leaders out there asking, can we build remote work cultures? Yes, yes, yes. Remote work culture building is just really good culture building. And it just has to do with being very explicit, asking for a lot of questions, iterating processes, just like Ryan talked about. And there are some smart investments that you can make that don't cost a lot, that will create a system that will really elevate a lot of the other things you're doing, like the one-off workshops and things like that. And that really begins with policy and with leadership.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And so pivoting a little bit to leadership and culture. So it can be hard to keep the team connected and motivated during these prolonged remote work environments. Ryan, how can technology play a role in maintaining the cohesive work culture?
A lot of these collaborative and communication softwares out there, your emails, your instant messaging systems, your Zoom or Team. And obviously there is a whole lot of fatigue when it comes to those, but there needs to be an awareness, not just from the, the health and well-being, just from a burnout kind of perspective. But it's honestly not really a digital solution, in my opinion. I'm a tech guy, but in my opinion, it's not a digital solution that really is the thing that keeps folks together in a team moving forward. It's the little personal touches. It's the sending a text or shooting a phone call from your cell phone. It's the things outside of the office that make sure that everybody's on track, that everybody's doing well. And then when you're on topic for things that are work related, continuing to use the tools that are available, like I said, the emails, the instant messaging, soft phones or desk phones, and following up with folks, because especially right now, there are a billion more distractions than there were prior to the pandemic. Not just the things going off from your email or instant messaging or phone calls, but also the things around the house. Like for me right now, I actually am upstairs in my wife's office at this particular moment, because my office is typically downstairs in the living room. And if I were to have a professional conversation with someone, I have two small dogs that believe they're the guard dogs of the neighborhood. So understanding that if I'm to work in a professional manner and speak with someone and try to have a good, effective conversation, I got to go somewhere else for a little bit. If it's an hour phone call and I go sit out on the patio to enjoy a beautiful 75-degree Texas mid-October day, I'm going to go do that. So these digital solutions are really just hopefully the things that we've already had implemented in place, but making sure that we're using them a little bit smarter, a little bit more conscientiously, and looking out for each other, because the stress that we all see nowadays with everything else that's going on, and I'm sure everybody has a family member that they're worried about in this time period. I know I do. It's more so personal than it is a technology thing, and it's a different feeling for me, especially because I'm a techie nerdy kind of guy. So trying to answer that and incorporate some kind of cool, fancy, shiny gizmo would just not do it justice.
Yeah, I love that. That's wonderful. For Anna, how much is the pandemic uncertainty impacting business decisions right now? And Julianne, you can go first.
I would say it's impacting it. Yes, it's impacting it a lot in terms of the uncertainty, but not. I think what Anna said before about sort of the pandemic pushing everything forward, and I think Ryan had mentioned that too. One of the things that we're doing when you were talking about tech ways to create culture, we're not something that eventually everybody now working from home is still working on their own personal cell phones. And if we move to a VoIP, then they will have a sonic number that they will be able to answer on whatever phone they're on and be able to turn it off so that they don't have their clients calling their own personal cell phones. I think it's going to be a big step for us. It's something that probably wouldn't have happened for another couple of years. So that's something that's like a pandemic-driven business decision that I think is a good long-term decision, regardless of the pandemic. But it's why I'm making the decision now.
Right.
Just as an example.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
I couldn't agree more, Julianne and Ryan, with what you're talking about of this idea. That there are certain decisions that they are just fundamentally good decisions, like cloud migration or getting these systems up and running. And I think that that's really the approach that we're taking with this is, so we were set to launch our virtual membership in 2021, and we launched it in 4 weeks in March of 2020. And I think that absolutely no way that we would have pushed that timeline had we not had to. And yet embracing that has been crucial. And I think I feel really fortunate that a lot of the work that we do is based in positive psychology, organizational psychology, helping leaders get the tools they need of resilience, of managing, fear, fear of the future and uncertainty. And we've kind of doubled down on our own number one core value, which is this idea of practice your practice. So we're out there teaching these skills and we're practicing them internally. And I couldn't agree more with what Ryan said. It's not about this fancy gizmo or that fancy gizmo or this workshop or that workshop. It's about the approach. It's about really looking and saying, all right, this is the reality. We don't know what the next card coming out of the pile is going to be, but we do know that prioritizing agility is important. And we know that prioritizing innovation, we know that prioritizing transparency, we know that prioritizing mental health, those are important now, and they're always going to be important. And so as leaders, I think we really focus internally, and we help our clients to focus on making decisions based on those values. And then also, hand in hand with that is really focusing in terms of our own business decisions on being okay with getting it wrong, as long as we talk about it candidly and fix it immediately. And I think that goes hand in hand with, innovating in a positive way. Sometimes you make a change and then tomorrow you get news that something in the world has changed and that's no longer going to work. But it comes back to this fundamental skill set. Can we be transparent? Can we call ourselves out? Can we be really self-honest as an organization? Can we be in clear communication with our teams? Because that's going to help us both capitalize on opportunities, but also address the mistakes that, just like positive changes, are going to happen more frequently and faster.
Yeah. It's interesting. So just a little story from the chamber. Last year, we were doing a lot of digital transformation, migrating to cloud, migrating to Teams, and we had a whole roadmap that was several months to year and a half in the making. And just like you said, we very rapidly just turned it all on, and we prepared really aggressively in the beginning of the year, and pretty much over the course of a weekend, we became a digital workforce, and it was exciting to see the staff transform with it. And it's been challenging, but it's also been really exciting, and it's been really exciting to take the staff on the journey. In terms of some of the technologies, Ryan, to keep us safe, what are some of the technical improvements? You mentioned patching and keeping systems updated to current revs earlier on. So what are the single most, like, what are the really important things that you would recommend, like right now, to tighten down your systems? And we keep hearing about ransomware attacks and phishing attacks, and we're seeing numbers that we've never seen. Doesn't matter the industry you're in or the size of the company you're in. It's really been something just we've never seen.
Oh, absolutely. I get more and more conversations on a weekly basis, and it's just been escalating with customers who have unfortunately been the target of some kind of attack, ransomware, phishing, something. We get phishing emails ourselves here in Dell every now and then. They're nearly impossible to fully block out. So it's really a matter of taking a look at security as basically an onion layered type of approach, and understanding that even if we were to have an infinite budget, it is literally impossible to keep every person, every bad actor on the planet out. No matter how much you implement, there will always be someone who can get through, just because there are people who work at it day and night and do a whole lot of work to be very bad people. But I think the most central aspects are always going to be make sure you have an up-to-date and well-sized firewall. That is centrally important. If you don't have a firewall, you're basically just might as well put all of your files from your laptop onto a public share folder on the internet and say, have at it. So a firewall. Next would be making sure that your operating systems are the most current up-to-date patch available, because with all of those patches come a lot of security aspects, and they try to block out any weakness or avenues that hackers or bad actors might like to exploit. After that would be updated hardware. With newer hardware comes less vulnerabilities that people have figured out and learned how to exploit. And then it would be beginning to talk to some network security experts and finding which things make the most sense for your business. Because like I said, we could have an infinite budget and still not keep everybody out. But the idea is to add a little here, add a little there, putting security on the endpoint devices. So all your laptops and desktops and tablets have some form of security protocol on them. Mm-hmm. Also quite important, because those are the weakest point in any network or any business. And like I said, little piece of security here, a little piece of security there, because with more layers on, you're eliminating more and more of the less talented folks, and you're making yourself less visible to the dark web and to all the bad people out there. And then it's just, reacting to anything that does pop up. So those security advisors who can monitor your network and report if any inappropriate action is being taken on your network with your applications, and can shut that down as fast as possible and help to rework your security protocols from there.
Great advice. Question that came in. So streamlining and maximizing technology is one of the biggest challenges for small business owners who are working remotely, but what about company culture? What are some strategies to maintain company culture and make sure employees still feel like they are part of the team? And so I'll look to Anna first to take this on.
Sure. I think this is a great question, and it kind of gets at this idea of what's the highest impact thing you can do with your team right now. Most basically, I think it comes from an approach, and it's an approach of listening and transparency. And so I think before you spend a dime on anything as it relates to company culture, which obviously if you have an opportunity to create budget for company culture, that's important too. But before that, it really comes from the approach of listening, asking your team, what do you need? What's your experience? I'm not a parent, but we work with a lot of parents. That's a very different need. Are you caring for someone else in your home? What mental or physical challenges, you don't have to be specific, but what are you dealing with? What kind of support is going to be the most helpful for you? Asking, and then helping people understand and being really transparent about, hey, so from an aggregate perspective, we are hearing this, and based on this information, here are, and I recommend that every organization right now ask themselves, are there some fundamental, small, but long-term, not something that you put out there and then take back, changes that you can make that will be really beneficial? So things that we see a lot of our companies focused on right now are things like setting boundaries about meetings. Is it okay to block out no meeting time? Is it okay not to have your video turned on, right? Is it okay to, take PTO? Can you change your PTO policy so that you enable people to take mental health days? And the other important part about that is, do not make an investment in your team that you are going to take back. So I think that when we talk about company culture, it's everything that we've been talking about. These are meaningful, these are best practices. They've always been best practices, but they're coming to the forefront of our attention now. So use the data. There's so much research out there, so much benchmarking data, whether or not you have it in your internal organization, as to the benefits of flexible work, remote work, flexible PTO. Learn how to implement that in your organization, or bring in an expert who can help you learn what impacts are going to be the most helpful, and then communicate that to your team. Say, here's what we're doing. Here's what you told us. Here's how we see being able to offer a solution for that. Here are the changes we're going to make. And these changes are going to be sustained over time. We may modify them, we may learn from them, but we're doing it because you deserve to be supported and happy. And I think if everyone can go through that, it doesn't matter what's on that list. If it's real and authentic to your team and it makes sense for your operations, it's going to be a hugely valuable long-term change. So without being too specific or getting into, like Ryan said, this shiny gizmo, that shiny gizmo, I would just offer up that process that you can take no matter if you have 2 people on your team or 2,000 people on your team.
That's great advice. Julianne, anything you would add to that?
I think especially for small businesses where teams are sort of a manageable size, putting people together to do different tasks than you normally would, because we have the opportunity to, like, we needed a COVID response plan, a COVID safety plan for the office. So instead of just me sitting down and writing out the COVID response plan, I picked 3 people who don't normally work together and asked them to come together to put forth a response to everybody in the business. And so I think that doing sort of remote work and sort of asking people to go outside of what might have been their normal comfort zone gives us an opportunity to build culture in a way that you would normally get running into each other at the sink, or, having to move things around in the office. And so being very, just very thoughtful in terms of putting out those engagements and then seeing if culture can build from there, I think is something that in small business is easier to do almost than in a large business where you've got 500 employees that you need to worry about handling different things.
Right. And Ryan, from where you come in terms of advising your clients from a technology standpoint, are there things that you see from a cultural standpoint that you also advise them on?
On a rare occasion, yes, absolutely. It is very important to keep in mind that a lot of business is being driven strictly from their technological capability anymore, simply because we don't have the day-to-day interaction, like Julianne said, at the water cooler, or having to walk a file from one office to another. So having the communicative and collaborative applications in place, just so that we can follow up with each other, and not being on the 48 hours, hey, I asked for this, where is this, kind of platform. It changes, and is absolutely also, like Anna said, it is going to forever change the way business from now on. So just understanding that, yeah, everybody's dealing with a bunch of stuff right now, of course, and sometimes a lot of distractions will prevent an immediate answer, but being able to follow up with each other, and with the respect given to fellow coworkers, it's interesting and it's different, but I think the overall is going to be a net positive for us.
Great. And then I'll put this question to the group. So what has been the takeaway from this time in terms of how to keep work-life balance when working remotely?
Yeah, I'd love to hop in on this one, just because I completely agree with what Julianne and Ryan are saying. It really comes down to setting new boundaries, right? When we talk about boundaries, personal boundaries or remote or organizational boundaries, they're limits. They're explicitly stating this is acceptable behavior and this is unacceptable behavior. And what we are seeing the longer that this goes on is that there's no replacing water cooler time. Slack is not catching up with someone in the kitchen, right? But to Leanne's point, there are some operational changes that we can make in terms of how our teams work together. We see mentorship be really effective, like setting up real mentorship programs, one-on-one meetings, all team meetings, cross-departmental brainstorms are huge. That's like on my short list of things that are really helpful. We also find that in terms of boundary setting, telling people, okay, we have this technology, here's how we want you to use it. We don't expect you to respond at 12 p.m. And then leadership really setting that example, but explicitly stating it. The only other thing I will say in terms of creating work-life balance, this is actually organization, is we found real value in defining ways that we talk about and embrace negative emotions in this time as well, not just innovative emotions, positive emotions, because sometimes connection means acknowledging that like our employees' mental health needs extra support, or setting explicit, boundaries around when it's okay to offer up, hey, I heard this is the direction we're taking. I wanted to offer this additional, feedback. Internally, we have implemented something that we call a perspective conversation, where team members are actually encouraged to share if they disagree with an approach or strategy, whether that's with a client that we're working on or internally as a company. And we will create this time. And it's not a decision-making time. It's not a convincing time. It's just a listening time. And I think that in terms of creating balance, finding a way to do that in your organization that works for your culture is really important, because the less we leave those things to kind of fester, when we address those issues head on at the start, that's going to create that balanced, sustainable culture as we move forward. So yeah, I would say, in answer directly to the question, it's just boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Say the things that you didn't think you had to say, because everyone will be happier.
That's great advice. Julianne, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I think that for me, we have always been very clear about work-life boundaries for the people that work for us. But my husband and I own Sonic, and we have zero work-life boundary, have always had zero work-life boundary. So this time has been particularly hard for us because, well, for me, because I actually found that I needed those boundaries. I couldn't do 24/7 because it was too draining. There was too much anxiety. I do have kids. It was like constant just stress, and I needed to block things off. And so I think that that the ability to do that was not something I was used to. And it is something that made me enjoy my summer a whole lot more, because when I was done for the day, I was done for the day, and it didn't matter. It was going to wait until tomorrow. And I don't think I've ever done that before. So I don't know if I can do it forever also, but it definitely helped hugely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're coming up on time now. We heard a lot about how business is evolving, the transition to remote work, and all the challenges in terms of maintaining boundaries and keeping our staff secure, culture. We heard a bit about leadership. I really want to thank our panel, Ryan, Anna, and Julianne. Thank you so much. Don't forget to join us all again tomorrow at noon Eastern Time for the breakout session of your choice. Thank you for a great session. Thank you for joining us during the big week for small business. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Ryan, thanks, Julianne.
Bye. Thank you. Nice meeting all of you.
Nice to meet you guys as
Good
well.
to meet you.